Now we're talking. Now I'm talking. All right. So here we go, from the top, yeah? 40 million jobs created in the EU in the past 5 years. 760,000 people saved in the Mediterranean. More than 240 million people in employment right now. 30,000 volunteers all over Europe. Public deficit going down. Investment, exports, trade deals. We have an incredible wealth of interesting information that we would like Europeans to have access to understand, to internalize, and to acknowledge the benefits that EU brings to various aspects of their daily lives. So, to that end, we are transforming these text-based communication into visuals that are easier to understand, easier to follow, and more digestible. And this works great in publications, in leaflets, in PowerPoint presentations. In fact, just yesterday, the Financial Times quoted one of the Commission's presentations in their Morning Digest. But is this enough for social media? Well, if our objective was to inform, then maybe it would be. But if we want to engage, then we need to go a little further. So I'm going to show you a few projects that were specifically designed for social media with engagement in mind. Now, the first one is inspired by Choose Your Own Adventure books or the Black Mirror episode Bandersnatch, where readers or viewers get to interact with the content and choose the direction the story takes. We took this idea and we implemented it on Twitter. We started with a tweet that invited people to join this adventure, and they had the option between being a globetrotter or launching their own startup. We created a storyboard that mapped out all the different choices users would make. We created 19 illustrations to drive the story forward, and we implemented this through dark tweets that were not visible on our thread, and you could only engage in the story through that first tweet that gave you the first two options. All the story threads ended with a call to action. If you want to continue this European adventure, go vote in the elections. Diplomacy picked up on this, and they really liked the innovative approach and testing new ground. And for me, this is one of the main takeaways of this project. Don't be afraid to test out new things, get inspiration from outside of the social media environment, and also play with new technologies. We've experimented with these interactive 3D visuals on Facebook. We're testing out augmented reality. So we really want to explore new grounds. Then another key learning is that visuals are not an afterthought. They can't be decoration. Visuals need to be part of the story. Every year, we celebrate EU countries' national days. And this is the type of content that is always very warmly received. And this year, we created a series that focuses on culture, architecture, sports, music, food, landmarks, historical figures. And this artistic approach works on all platforms, including Twitter, that is mostly a news-driven and policy-driven platform. Another example of this kind of approach that focuses on values and rights and benefits is This is Ecu Series, which started as an idea in a brainstorming session between the graphic design team and the social media team about 3 years ago. And since then, we created more than 60 visuals. Each of them has its own personality, its own flavor. We use photography, illustration, mixed medium. And we use these throughout the year on various occasions. We find communication hooks for all of them. But particularly ahead of the elections, we really went to town. We created a thread called 29 Reasons to Vote, where we used these visuals as main hooks, and then we told a story about what the EU does and why it's important to vote. We used the same kind of approach on all platforms, and we reached more than 21 million people with just this visual series. We had more than 31 million impressions on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And Euractiv also picked up on the 29 reasons to vote and featured us in their Tweets of the Week roundup, as well as Politico, after the elections, when they had a look at the accounts in the EU bubble and placed ours at the top with more than 300 new MEPs already following the account. So a couple of takeaways from this. Identify the core values of your organization, your institution, and talk about them. It's not all about data visualization, it's also about human connection. And you might have seen this one before. Visuals are the story. They're not an afterthought. Now, just because we're a corporate institutional account doesn't mean that everything we put out there needs to be very serious. Over the summer, we created a pretty fun, light-hearted series of visuals where two little stars were the protagonists. They had exchanges on traveling, holiday making, passenger rights, nature, the European approach to plastic excess, and so on. And we've used these visuals mainly on Instagram, which made it the most engaging platform over the summer. And apart from the standalone visuals, we also created these little stickers that could be placed on individual illustrations or on several images, and created this cohesive approach over the summer. They worked so well that we then replicated them on all our other platforms, and even on LinkedIn, they work incredibly well. So even on platforms that are very professional and serious, a little bit of fun always works. Another series we did in March was focusing on women who were pioneers or who achieved great things in politics, in science, in art. And we published one of these illustrations every week ahead of the International Women's Day. And for me, my favorite interaction, we reached 7 million people with this series. Well, my favorite interaction was on the illustration of Marie Curie, which we published on the International Day of Women in Science, where a lady from Italy commented on our post and told her story about how EU funding helped her with her research project. So it was so nice to see people actually interact on these illustrations and share their stories. Key takeaways: find your voice. Even if we're talking from a very official and corporate position, we can always find ways of engaging in a more human way, showing a bit of humor, showing a human face, and trying different approaches. And with this one, come on, let me hear you. Visuals are the story. Good. So now that we found our voice, what better way to use it than sing? We are today launching the EU Spotify account shared between the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council, where we created some very European playlists. You can find stickers just here in the lobby that you can scan. Yeah, and they take you to our account, so go check it out. And I will wrap up this presentation with just 3 recommendations if you want to make your visuals a closer part of the story. And my first recommendation is to involve your designers early on in the process. Don't start working on the content and then when you're finished with it, pass it on to a designer and ask them to beautify. Also, it's important to give them enough information about this project. What is the audience? How do you intend to use this visual? What channels? What format? Is there anything they should stay clear of? Is there anything they should feature in the story? And finally, give them enough time. Too strict a deadline kills creativity. So I hope you find this presentation useful, and thank you very much.